been a long and unpredictable winter, as we all know. So we're pleased to be able to present our spring seminar this year. And we have an exciting discussion on one of our favorite topics, which is on perennials. We had 6 people who have been donors for our seminars every year, and I'd like to mention them and thank them for their beautiful favors that they gave us this year. We have lovely flowers from Centerville Florist. We have an arrangement of tools from Centerville Ace Hardware. We have gift cards from the Flower Man on West Park Drive, an arrangement of flowers from Siebenthaler Nursery and Garden Store on Far Hills Avenue, and a perennial book courtesy of the Warren County Master Gardeners Association. And a little note about us for anyone who doesn't know too much about City Beautiful. We're an all-volunteer group appointed by City Council. Our mission is multifaceted, and we're currently looking for new members. And interestingly enough, to become a member, there are just 2 prerequisites. You have to live in the city limits of Centerville and just be interested in keeping Centerville the beautiful place it is to live and to work and to play also. You don't have to be a gardener either. A lot of people mistake City Beautiful Commission for having to be a gardener. Not true. So if you're interested, you can talk to any of the people that are here today from our commission that are wearing the commission badges, or you can get further information at the city building by calling 433-7151 or going on the website at centervilleohio.gov. Some of our major projects include sponsorship of the Summer Landscape and Holiday Lighting Awards, the Spring Seminar, an annual Arbor Day celebration, and planting, and maintaining the gardens at Four Corners, which is the big intersection of town by City Barbecue and Graders up there. And then we maintain that garden throughout the planting and growing season. For further information, you can see any of us. I would like to recognize our liaison person with Centerville City Council, and that's Councilperson Joanne Rao, who's seated back there. Okay. Public Works staff, we work very closely with Public Works. And our project manager is here, Mary Lou. Where are you? She's here. There she is, over on that side. Thanks. And I would like you to know there are several of our Master Gardener volunteers here from Montgomery County, and we do have an hour CEU credit for Master Gardeners for this seminar. Okay, it is my pleasure and my honor to introduce to you the mayor of the city of Centerville, who will welcome you and give a few words and introduce our speaker for this morning. Please welcome our Mayor, Brooks Compton.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here this morning, and what a great crowd, and very typical for an April 2nd day in Centerville to start out nice and sunny but chilly. Jan, thank you very much. The City Council and I know the city staff really appreciate the work that the Centerville City Beautiful Commission does year in and year out. They are an integral part of the success that the look that Centerville gives people when they come through here, and those of us who live here, we very much appreciate all the work that they do every year, year in and year out. Jan does a terrific job with the City Beautiful Commission, and I know there are a number of City Beautiful Commission members here today, and if they don't mind, I'd ask them to stand up, and you can contact any of them about becoming a member of the City Beautiful Commission or have an opportunity to participate in any of their activities. So if you wouldn't mind, those City Beautiful Commission members who are here today, if you wouldn't mind standing, and they definitely deserve a round of applause. They do a terrific job. As Jan referenced, Joanne Rao is our City Council liaison with the City Beautiful Commission, so you can certainly contact Joanne and talk with her about it also. We are very honored to have a special speaker here today, Dr. Laura Dieter from The Ohio State University is here. And I don't know how THE always is in front of that, but it always is. Dr. Dieter graduated, she got her PhD from The Ohio State University in 2002, and she is a full professor at Ohio State. She is the professor and coordinator, the Landscape, Horticulture, and Horticultural Science group at the Agricultural Technical Institute in Worcester. And I should have practiced that a little bit more, but I'm sure but I'll get through it before the end here. Laura is a member of the Ohio Nursery and Landscape Association. She is a member of the Perennial Plant Association, and she has great practical experience as she owned her own landscaping company in Columbus called Dieter Exteriorscapes before she took her position when she was honored with a position in Worcester to go with the Ohio State University. You'll have a chance to see her make her presentation today, but she's been highly recognized. She received the Teacher Award for the Agricultural Technical Institute. She's the Ohio State University Alumni Association Distinguished Teacher Award, a Perennial Plant Association Academic Award, and she has received the American Horticultural Teaching Award. She's a nationally recognized speaker. She speaks throughout the country at many seminars on perennials, obviously, landscape design, plant health management, sustainable landscaping, in addition to her teaching responsibilities at The Ohio State University. When I looked up a little bit of information about Dr. Dieter, there's one thing that came up. It was rate my professor. And I thought it was very interesting. There were a lot of comments about her teaching skills. And she was the top of the line in helpfulness and clarity were the two major topics, and she was absolutely top rated there. And then they had the ease with which it is to navigate her class, and she received very high marks there, but they said it was a difficult class, and it was one that she was a very good teacher in, but that the course topic was difficult. So we know we have an excellent teacher here today, and she indicated that she would be offering a short quiz afterwards, so please pay very close attention. She's married, has 2 kids, 3 dogs, and 300 of her closest friends are perennial plants. So, Dr. Dieter, we welcome you here. Thank you for taking the time to be here. Thank you very much.
Okay, do I need the mic? No. You in the back hear me? All right, I want to make sure everybody in the back can hear me. I've never been told I was too quiet. But there is a lav mic up here if we need it. I got a couple of questions. How many people here are master gardeners? I want to see numbers. Any business owners? A couple of business owners? Landscapers? Garden centers? Other businesses that have interest in the green industry? How many people consider themselves to be gardeners? Okay, how many people have been gardening for we'll just go with a long time. Now, how many people have been gardening for more than an hour? That should be everybody in this room if you're a gardener, right? Okay, so if you've been gardening for more than an hour, you're an expert. Okay? Because the reality is, until you start killing a few plants, you can't figure out what it is that they need. You know, and don't ever worry about plant death. I never feel guilty when a plant dies. You know why? Plant death is out today to shop. Then you gotta go get more friends. So don't feel bad if your plants are dying. All right, so let's go ahead and drop the lights a little bit here if we can. Maybe we can get these big bright lights off of here. Well, I notice a lot of people have notes and things like that. You're welcome, obviously, to take notes because, like you said, there will be a quiz at the end. Absolutely not a problem. It'll also be in botanical Latin. Because, you'll see my email there. If you would like a PDF copy of this, email me. Okay. All right, so dieter.7@osu.edu. I will more than happily email you a copy of the PowerPoint so you don't have to frantically take notes. If you miss something, you know, I'll send it to you. No big deal. So I'd like to welcome you to my gardening process. And as my neighbors have told me, she has an interesting design style. Because we're gardeners. We tend to do things a little bit differently than most Americans do. Most Americans tend to be very indoor type people. And we are not very indoor type people. Most of us are, it's 35 degrees. That's above zero. I can go outside and pull weeds, right? How many people, when they visit their neighbors, are plucking weeds up to the front door and saying, here, I started your compost pile for you? You know, those are things that we gardeners do. So we garden with friends. I thought this was very appropriate given the flyer that I saw, and I saw the little friends on the signs leading into the building, which is how I knew I was in the right place. I have approximately 100 of these guys in my yard. They are also my dear friends. They're my little babies. And if you look, you'll see little devils and zombies, and I have OSU ones and all kinds of crazy little things. And everything in your garden comes with a story. And sometimes the story of the plant, the art, the design is almost as important as the ability to take care of that. So these guys are no different. They have a story. My neighbors and I, we don't see eye to eye on, well, anything. And one year my husband came home from work. He had a 6-foot-tall light-up Christmas tree. He got it on sale for $6 or something like that. And I put it out in the yard in the holiday season. And we had a neighborhood holiday party. And my neighbor said, you know, you're the most garden-savvy person in this neighborhood. Why would you put that horribly tacky light-up tree in your yard? And I went, but I like it because it cost $6. And then I got to thinking, you don't like that. But I can only leave Christmas decorations up for a couple of weeks. What else can I do? Pink flamingos! So I went to the store and I bought a box of pink flamingos, and I did not have the metal legs shoved up the underside of the first one, and they were running across the street. What are you doing? But I'm putting this in the yard. What do you want it to do? I hope it multiplies. They do. They multiply with abandon. And as I've discovered, they fly south every year. So they don't survive the winter very well. They fly south every year. And this past year, some of them came back changed. So the whole point of all of this is you might as well have fun with this. Because how many people are completely broke at the end of the season because there was a sale? You had to go. Does your car automatically turn into the garden center no matter where you were originally going? You know, those are the things that we do, right? You know, and how many people are outside and you realize, oh man, I've been outside for 16 hours. I should probably go in and get something to eat. And your significant other is going, honey, get in here. Dinner is getting cold. And you're crawling around on the ground and you get up and you, oh. Hang on. Oh, you know, and so it takes you a while, you know, and so once you're down, you just got to get down until the job is done, right? Then you can stand back up again. So, because you might as well have fun with it. Your back doesn't work, your knees don't work, you can't get the dirt out from underneath your fingernails, and there's no money left in the bank account anyways because you spend it all on the plants. So you might as well have a good time with this. And you see things like this all the time where people are having a good time with their landscaping, with their gardens. Why not? Why not? If you have to have a fence, why not have fun with the fence? Because that's just awesome in every sense of the word. Because it's different, because it's unusual. And you might be sitting out there going, no. And that's okay. That's the other thing that happens with gardens. Whose garden is it? Repeat after me. It's my garden. It's my garden. So whose permission do you need to do things in your garden? You. Well, maybe your significant other. But most of the time, there's not necessarily seeing eye to eye between you and your significant other. And you have probably had this conversation. Where are you going to put those? If you have not purchased at least 10,000 plants in your lifetime as a gardener that you had no idea where you were going to put, you have not made it as a gardener yet. Here's another way. If you've got a significant other that's kind of on your case about doing that, invent a quarantine area. So that way when they do discover your plants, you can go, oh, honey, we've had that. I don't know where you've been. So, we talk about it. Why do we garden? Why are we broke with busted up knees and back and dirty fingernails and all of that? Why do we do that? It's fun? Stress relief. Oh yeah, it's great stress relief when you find that thistle. Out of the garden. That's great stress relief, isn't it? All right, stress relief, fun. Pardon me? Say it, speak up. It's in your DNA, okay. It is. It actually is in our DNA. We care for things. We can teach the next generation about the cycle of life, about insects, about plants, about all kinds of things. So it's a learning experience. There's all kinds of ways we can get other folks with hands-on. Sometimes it's the story. One year I told all the children of my neighborhood that daylilies had edible flowers. Not one daylily in the neighborhood anywhere had flowers on it that year, because anytime anything flowered, one of the children would go up and eat it. You know, so because they had edible flowers. And so the kids were fascinated by this. So we garden for the future. We garden for ourselves. We garden for the beautification of it. And we garden for sometimes strange reasons. We expect a lot of our plants, don't we? We expect them to do all kinds of things. We expect them to grow in all kinds of different places. We expect them to grow in containers. We expect them to fill in the little details. We expect them to provide fun. We expect to be able to create a vista, a view. We want to have seasonal color. We would like to include art. We'd like to have our houses look beautiful. We might need a cutting garden. We might want to attract pollinators. We might want to attract butterflies. We are expecting a lot out of these plants, aren't we? And there's a lot of plants that we can choose from. How many perennials are there? The correct answer is lots. I heard it, lots. There's lots and lots of them. And the challenge comes is if you're trying to introduce a friend of yours to the wonderful world of perennials, when they walk into a garden center with you, oh my God, where do I start? You start with A, honey. And then you pick everything in A, and then you go to B, because I know how gardeners shop. You get your little cart. And you haven't even gotten 5 feet in a garden center and you got 15 plants in your cart, all right? How many people have purchased a car simply because it's got nice square sides that can hold a lot more plants? Yeah, huh? See, I know how y'all are. I know how y'all are. So we expect our plants to solve problems for us. And perennials can readily do that. So here's a rooftop garden. And most of what we're seeing on the roofs nowadays are things that are small, tiny little plants. We're now breeding plants specifically to grow on the harsh conditions of a roof. And many of our rooftop gardens are not necessarily designed to even be seen. So is that really a garden? We can only see it if we get on Google Earth and looking down, and they happen to take a picture of it at that point. Right? So, but these plants are solving a problem. What are they doing? They're cooling. They're preventing storm water from hitting the storm systems, right? They're solving challenges that we've discovered that we have that maybe plants can help us with, right? They solve problems as simple as we would like something to be pretty in front of the house, right? Get the taxus and the junipers and the yews and all those things away from the front of the house. Put those on the compost pile, right? Put the perennials in front of your house, and then you can get year-round flowering. We may have shady areas. Right? This particular plant is a bear's breeches. If anybody asks me what my #1 favorite plant is, it happens to be whatever plant I'm standing in front of at the time. But if you were to force me to pin me down on things, this one ranks probably in the top 5. Right? Bear's breeches. Acanthus. Remember that one. There's your quiz, all right? Acanthus. It will grow in sun or shade. In sun, it becomes a big, bold, bodacious plant. In shade, it's a little smaller. It's got a big, spiky white flower on it. The white flowers are pretty, but the hooded bract is really the important part, because the bract gives you that purplish color for most of the rest of the season. And it's this is the Greek columns. So if you look at old architecture, this is the plant that a lot of that architecture was based on. All right, so it's a very ancient style of plant. There are a number of different species available out there. They look, unfortunately, when they first come out of the ground, like little thistles. Here's how you tell the difference. If you grab an acanthus, it just says, "Oh, thank you very much." If you grab a thistle, it goes and bites back. Right, so this looks spiky and thistle-like, but if you grab it, it won't bite you back. So bear's breeches, fantastic plant. It will need space. And I don't mean it's going to want to take over your whole garden. This is a plant that is going to be 3 or 4 feet across. All right, so it's a big plant. You're going to have some space for it. Ground covers. Ground covers do not just have to be English ivy. English ivy is the plant that is trying to take over the whole world. English ivy is a plant that will eat your buildings. English ivy is one of those plants that when you decide you're eventually going to cut it back, you go, oh, that's where Fluffy went. Wow. He went missing 10 years ago. But we can use perennials to solve those problems. They can solve erosion problems. We've got many ground covers for sun or shade. Those of you who are dealing with that wonderful, wonderful creature, the deer, don't we love their big brown eyes and how cute they are, and they're so adorable. Here's the solution. Every single one of them is allergic to high velocity lead. Bambi tastes good. But we've got deer resistant. There's no such thing as deer proof. All right? But we've got deer resistance. This is a campanula. This is a ground cover campanula. All right? This guy will grow in sun or shade. You definitely want to give it space. This is one where you read the tags, it'll say vigorous. Read erosion control. Read needs lots of space. Read does not play well with others. But maybe we need that. Maybe we've got an area where we've got a large area like this where we can't get the lawn to grow. But we need something to control the erosion and the soil running off and things of that nature. All right, here's another one. We can sort of see the perennials mixed in. Perennials do not have to be, here's your little circle, and here's your little circle, and here's your little circle. Don't touch. That's how we draw landscapes, isn't it? Have you ever been out in the woods and seen plants grow like that? No. They evolved with friends. They evolved in communities. And perennials are wonderfully adaptable in most cases in that they can have their community altered. None of these plants here evolved together. They're not even from the same countries. But they happily play well with each other. So we've got a little ground cover on there. And if you look at the planting space right by a driveway, what are the conditions that we have with driveways? It's hot, sunny, we've got reflected heat off of there, it's very dry, we've got a very small planting area, so when it dries out in the summertime, we're going to have a very dry situation. You might have road salts, de-icing chemicals to deal with as well. You might have more pollution. You might occasionally have somebody who couldn't quite figure out where to park the car and they get out and step on the things getting out of the car. Those plants can handle that. Right? So we've got plants that can handle some foot traffic. We've got plants that can handle the pollution and the compaction and the drought. So here we have New Zealand flax is the big tall one, heucheras, and sedum down at the base, a little ground cover sedum, stone crop. Why not plant them on the stairs? These guys can all handle foot traffic. Now, realistically speaking, if you have a football team that runs up and down your stairs 3 or 4 times a day, that's not what you know, no, don't put them there, okay? But realistically speaking, for most of us who are going in and out of our houses 3 or 4 times a day, maybe, you might step on it here, you might step on it there, here, just a little bit different every time you step. These plants can handle that sort of thing, and they take an otherwise barren area that may look very harsh and allow you to do different things with it. So there's actually about 15 different species of perennials in that particular image. Dry sites. Now, granted, we can't grow these guys here. This is a southwestern agave. But we've got all kinds of things. You know, we talk about cactus. Do you know how many species of cactus are native to Ohio? 15. 15. So are there plants that will tolerate our hot, dry summers? Yeah, of course there are. Are there plants that will tolerate our wet springs, our wet winters, and our hot, dry summers? Of course there are. And they're called Ohio natives. Right? And they're called, in some cases, North American natives. So we can expand beyond the state of Ohio simply because, does the plant care whether it's from Ohio or that state up north? I'm looking at you. No, it does not. All right? They care not for geopolitical boundaries. They care for environments. So if we've got plants that are not necessarily Ohio natives, but they're Midwestern natives, or they're native to a country whose conditions are similar, then we know that that plant is going to do fairly well for us. We can use them to combine different colors and different styles and different textures and all sorts of things. So here we've got a wet location, And interestingly enough, in a more wet location, we also have a plant that likes dry locations. So if you look in the front, there's a lamb's ear. Lamb's ear likes it really hot and dry. If we look at plants that are fuzzy, fuzziness is usually an adaptation to drought because it prevents moisture loss in the leaves. So really, really fuzzy plants are often really drought tolerant. Not always, but often very, very drought tolerant. Right? And then behind it, the purple leaf, that is a ligularia. Ligularia likes it wet. Well, how can we put a wet and a dry plant together? You know what you can do? You take a trash bag, you take a fork, you poke a couple of holes in it, you dig your hole, you line the hole with the trash bag, and now you've flown the water drainage in that area, and the rest of the plants can still have it dry. You've created a wet site for one plant because, wow, that looks kind of cool. Container gardening on walls is something that we are seeing more and more of. We're seeing this more and more actually within the vegetable production, where we're getting our edible plants and we're moving them to where we can actually stand up to pick them, because getting down on the ground and up on the ground and down on the ground and up on the ground can be a challenge sometimes. I'm of the opinion that if I am outside weeding, I am down on the ground until the weeds are done. Then I'm standing up. But, so we move things up, but you can do it just as easily with ornamentals as you're seeing here. That's something that we're starting to see more and more as we're finding more ways to utilize more plants. We grow plants in containers. We find containers all over the place. We're seeing outdoor rooms, literal rooms, and not the kind of British style of outdoor room where we're going to enclose it with a hedge and it's really going to be a garden that we're going to call a room. It's a room for the plants. We are now in this country seeing an extension of the house move outside. There are televisions built for outside conditions, because if you're eating outside, you have to watch the game. So we now have televisions outside. We have outdoor kitchens. It's no longer just a fire pit or just the barbecue outside. It's a full-blown kitchen outside. Here is a full-blown living room outside. So all the plants are growing in various containers. Containers can be as much a part of the landscape as you would like them to be. They can be the El Cheapy things that you run to your local box store and when they're on sale, big pot for 10 cents, that's mine. They could be any sorts of thing. Containers are fantastic for controlling plants that you don't otherwise want in the garden itself. So if we look at that big tall thing, that's equisetum, horsetail rush. Those of you who might live on a farm or have a large property, you probably have its very, very close cousin, mare's tail, which is a really wonderful weed. Isn't it wonderful? Don't we just love that plant? Right? This is the same thing. If you put this in the garden and you don't happen to have a spare Diplodocus or Brontosaurus wandering around, because that was the predator of this plant. This plant has been around since before the dinosaurs. It knows what it needs to survive. It doesn't really have very many natural predators at this point. So if you put it in the ground, what's it going to do? It's going to eat everything, and very few things will eat it. One of the main components in its stems is silicon, sand. So when you pull it apart and you rub the juices, you can feel how gritty it is. The animals don't tend to like grit. I don't like grit, so I don't like sand, that texture of sand in my food, neither do the animals. So that's one of the ways that this plant keeps predation off. Right? But we put it in a container, and where's it going to go? It's just going to go in the container. It's not going to spread out everywhere else, so we've controlled it. Right? All those aggressive plants, put them in a container. We can do all kinds of things. Big containers, little containers. Containers allow us to invent the soil. When I learned that as a college student, I said, what? You mean I can put rocks? I don't have to put dirt in this container? I can put rocks in this container and grow desert plants? Cool! Awesome! Because I also suffer, and I highly recommend you suffer from this, zone denial. When the USDA changed us from zone 5 to zone 6, I was absolutely, when we were zone 5, I was like, okay, that means I'm zone 7. So when we went to zone 6, I swear we're zone 8. So now this year we kind of were. But, why not? How do we know exactly what it's going to take that plant to survive? We don't. Grow those plants. When they say, oh, well, that's a zone 6. Sometimes I'm zone 6, sometimes I'm 5. Buy it anyways. What's the worst that happens? It dies? What'd I tell you about that? That's just the opportunity to go get more plants. Right, so we can use it for there. We can use containers. This is kind of the new style for pools nowadays. Put the planting containers inside the concrete. Rather than setting a container on top of the concrete or the stones, we're now putting them inside. That's basically a container. What is a container? A contained area where the plants cannot escape. So now we're seeing them inside the concrete. We can use containers as part of the landscape. They don't necessarily have to be with plants in them. Although I look at that and go, well, unless you're going to use that, I'd want plants in it, because I suffer from another disease that I call CHAD, compulsive horticultural acquisition disorder. How many people in this room have that disease? Yes, a number of us have that disease. That's a great disease to have, isn't it? And this is the 12-step program for it, so you're fine. When something breaks, repurpose it. All right? There's a perennial chair. I've always told somebody that, this was at a garden center, I said, you should need to get a bed frame, and then you could say this is a perennial bed. And that was just, I was a little more amused by that than the garden center owner was. Float containers. That grass would not normally grow in the water. So let's put a container that doesn't have any holes in the bottom so the media doesn't get soaking wet, and put a grass that doesn't normally grow in the water. Right? Hang your containers on the wall. Vertical gardens have become a huge thing. All right? And this is basically a painting done in plants. Now, you're saying, well, that's not going to last for years. Who cares? You know what that means? That means next year you get to take it down and you get to shop for more plants. Right? This is not necessarily a low maintenance style of gardening, but it certainly allows us to get plants into an area where we wouldn't necessarily be able to get plants before. We might otherwise have to have something very tall to get that vertical effect. Now we can get these hanging on the wall, and you can have basically a painting outside on your house. We want plants to show the little details, and I want you as gardeners this year, as you go into the garden, to not just look at the combination of these 5 plants or the combination of the whole yard, but look at the little details. Watch the bees. And I know it is hard for us as gardeners to sit still, because we go, yep, that plant's healthy. Okay, that needs some fluffing and pruning. That needs deadheading. Oh, a weed. And we're constantly doing things, because that's the type of people that we are. Take 5 minutes. Watch the bees. If you're really, really good, the bumblebees, they actually will allow you to pet them. I kid you not. They are very, very tolerant. I'm not saying, I will love him and squeeze him and hug him and call him George. That's not what I'm talking about, all right? Very, very calm, very quiet. Stand there, let them calm down, get used to your presence for it. It only takes a minute, and you could just gently reach out and pet them. They're very, very soft, and they tolerate this. Yellow jackets, on the other hand, do not. Right? Those guys, I have some not nice words for. All right? Notice the detail in the flowers. All right? Put your house plants out as part of the garden. Not just, I got to get these things out of the house so they survive a little bit longer. Put them in the garden. Make them as much a part of the garden as the annuals, as the perennials that you're dealing with. All right? That's columbine. Right? Look how beautiful that plant is, almost detached from the rest of the plant. Besides, the rest of the plant probably has leaf miner and you don't want to see it anyways. Okay? Look how gorgeous those flowers are, just in the little details of the flowers. Look for those patterns. I love to find patterns in nature. Nature produces all kinds of really, really cool patterns. And if you can't see them, or you think you see them, get your phone out. And then you can get it on the computer, you can get on your screen, you can blow it up and really get in and focus in on those patterns, and you really see some cool things that Mother Nature does. And if we look at that, look at the way those spiral around. And if you're just out there pulling weeds, you might miss that. So take a few minutes and say, I'm not going to look at the weeds today. I'm going to look, and really see the flowers. Really see the patterns that the leaves make, the colors that are there, the vibrancy. This is a living organism. Right? It really doesn't care what you think about it. But appreciate the beauty that these living organisms can bring to us. Flip the water lilies over. This is the backside of a water lily. This is exactly how water lilies survive in water, actually. So if you want the botanical explanation, if you're more of the sciencey type, then we can give you the botanical explanation for this. You see all those little channels and pockets? Air gets trapped in there. Just the same way that, you know, you can float something on the water and air gets trapped in there. And what the plant does as the water kind of goes like this, it moves the air down to the roots. And that is how water lilies survive in a waterlogged situation. They have a mechanism for moving air from just underneath the surface of the leaves down to the roots so they can get their moisture. The pattern's in a single leaf. That's a banana. Could be a canna. Canna, there's lots and lots of different colors. Could be a hosta. There's lots of fantastic things there. But that's a banana. That is a cycad, a houseplant, sending up its new series of fronds for the year. And look at the fuzz. You just want to pet the thing. Don't pet it afterwards because it'll try to attack you. But look at the fuzz, and you look at that plant, and I said, that plant has been around for 400 million years. And you realize that, I mean, just the science behind that alone is just really, really cool. But it's so soft and fuzzy, it's like petting a baby lamb. It's the cutest thing ever. Right. The colors, right? Those are beets. Because our vegetable growers have realized that we as gardeners also like to do the vegetables, but we like things to taste good and look good. So now our propagators are inventing plants that not only taste good and can be edible, but also look fantastic. Now you gotta get down on the ground to see this, or you gotta put it in a container. Get the container to come up, and now you can harvest and do whatever it is you need to do. You don't have to bend over and hurt your back, and you can get to look at wonderful stems like this. This is a peony emerging from the ground. I lay on the ground with my camera to take this picture because when I walked past it, I said, you know, that looks like a forest. I bet if I got close enough, it would look like a forest of trees. And to me, that's what I see. So at all different scales, all different levels, look at some of those details. That's the roots of a palm tree. And granted, we don't grow a whole lot of palm trees outside here, but you could probably get them outside here easier than I can. Right, and keep them outside for most of the summer. Palm trees have these wonderful buttressing roots that are fantastic. Look at the details of combinations of things. Once you're done looking at one plant, look at a couple of plants. Find that one plant that your neighbor's going to go, what? Because getting your non-gardening friends to go, what? Is just cool. One of the reasons that we garden, though, is a garden is something to be interacted with. Right? We interact with the garden. So we get it. We get it. We're gardeners. We get it. It's in our DNA. Right? You can't not do it. Most people are not like that. So if you find this plant that looks dead, and it's not, and your neighbor goes, what? When are you going to get that dead plant out of there? Ha ha ha, what do you know? You know, but what have you done? You've caused interaction. When you go to a museum, how many people have been to a museum? Art museum? Okay, those of you who haven't raised your hands, you know there's such a thing as an art museum, right? And an art museum, they have paintings. And you might stand there with your significant other and look at a painting and you're going, ugh, what? And your significant other is standing there going, oh man, that just speaks to me. This is amazing. Because art is personal. Landscaping is a form of art. Gardening is a form of art, and it's personal. Right? So you get an interaction. Interaction doesn't have to be, wow, that's incredible. Interaction can be, what? What is that? Right? When you're done looking at the little picture, start looking at the bigger picture. Right? Look at the combinations that we could create. Look at we could say we're going to restructure a Midwestern prairie. Does that mean we have to have Midwestern plants? I look at that and I see in the background, you know what I see? I see Russian sage. It's the fastest condiment around. He's always rushing around. Those are on my tests too, actually. Plant puns are the best. What do bees drop on their enemies? Bee bomb. Very good. Quiet stinging insect? Still bee. Sorry. Yeah, they're bad, aren't they? But it doesn't necessarily have to be native plants combined with native plants. They just have to have the same general conditions if they're going to be in the ground. Russian sage likes the same conditions as a lot of our native coneflowers and black-eyed Susans and daisies and things of that nature. Right? If you like things a little more ordered, then it's okay. You go here and you go here and you're not touching, and you go here and here and here and here and here. And that's fine if you like things a little bit more ordered. This is a lot more ordered than the last shot that we saw, and yet it's still just as beautiful. Doesn't matter whether you're more of the chaos person or more of the ordered person, you can get what you want with Perennials. So we take a look at the combination. Here's a water feature. You have all kinds of water features with the water running, water not running. You should have some movement. Otherwise, what do we get in water? Skitters, and we don't like skitters. Those are bad. Right? That, along with ticks, they can go extinct as far as I'm concerned. And I do not care. Bats will find something else to eat. All right, so beautiful combinations of things. That is an indoor bathroom area. I would just be going, oh, I need to go to the bathroom again. Right, that's at Longwood Gardens. Yes, yeah, those of you who have been there, you've probably seen it. Don't you love it when you go to a place like Longwood Gardens and you find a weed? And you get to make fun of them because they have more money than God. So they can do anything that they want. And you missed the weed, guys. Ha ha. Plant in rivers. We always draw circles. Plants don't grow in circles, particularly in perennials. Right? And if you've ever planted a black-eyed Susan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because it's a little, it's a little, it's a little, and then whoop, it goes over there. And then it goes over there. And then it eats something. And you know, they're constantly moving around. Right? So plant them so they can do that. So if you look through the river there, look through the middle there, there's a river of Japanese bloodgrass. Right? You could do anything if you didn't want to plant that particular plant. You could do anything in there. Well, purple coneflowers have lately been the plant to have. They've certainly been the plant that I've seen all kinds of breeding happen with. The April Fool's joke yesterday going in the online social media plant world was somebody had invented a blue one, and a whole bunch of us were like, please, please do that. We know it's April Fool's Day, but I want it. You can have it too. Get out your spray paint. Is it okay to treat a perennial as an annual? Yes. Yes. The answer to that is yes. How is it any different than you forget to bring your dahlias inside, or you haven't brought your cannas inside, or you think, well, I'll get to that, and then you just don't, or Mother Nature goes, it's the end of September and we're going to have a killing frost. Ugh. You know, it happens. So if we look at these, right, delphinium, I have never managed to grow delphinium that tall. Usually I buy delphinium when they're in full flower, and I take them home and I put them in the ground and I turn around and I go to look at them and they're dead. And they've gotten that big. I'm of the opinion that you probably have to sacrifice chickens to get delphiniums to grow. But I look at this and I say, even if I can't grow it, if you like it, get it. It's your garden anyways. If you like that plant and it is only going to live for 6 seconds, buy it anyways, because you will have the most pleasurable 6 seconds of your life at that point. Well, maybe the second most. Combine things, plant things together. The tag may say full sun, partial sun. Well, what exactly does that mean? Botanically, I can tell you exactly what that means. Who cares? Who cares? Put them in the ground. Does it work well together? Yes. I have seen sun plants growing in shade. Sure, they get tall and straggly and floppy, but so what? That's what string is for. Tie them up. Give them some color and some seasonal interest. Seasonal interest does not necessarily mean it looks like June 12 months of the year. All right? Seasonal interest means what is it supposed to look like, and what can I do to increase the interest just a little bit? All right? These are native grasses. I took this picture in Colorado in March. And look at the colors. And if you start to notice the different shades of brown and bronze and copper, and you think, wow, those are colors you don't often see in the garden. That's just really, really awesome. It's cool. Okay, yes, it's hard to top that, right? So then, all right, we get ornamental grasses, we get bulbs. We always, bulbs, and those things are so hard to plant. Plant them once, and then you're done with them. right? And if you plan in advance, which none of us actually do, because I know how gardeners are, you just think, I'm going to go buy some more plants. And so, but if you're able to plan in advance, you can actually, since you're going to raise the bed anyways a little tiny bit for drainage, you put your bulbs down, you put your soil on top of that, and then you've planted them. You're going to have 6 inches of topsoil on top of that anyways, right? That's what you're planning on putting in. If you're going to raise the bed a little bit, put your bulbs on, 6 inches of soil, they're planted 6 inches deep. Oh, I didn't even have to dig. If you've done your bed prep properly, you shouldn't need a shovel to dig these things. That means you should be able to reach into the ground, grab a handful of soil, pop a bulb in there. If you're going to dig a big hole like you would plant a tree. If you've got 500 bulbs to plant, you're not going to dig 500 holes. You dig one giant hole and you put them in the ground after that. One hole. So here we've got the color. This is false indigo, baptisia, coming out of the ground. Oh, it does look like asparagus, doesn't it? But isn't that cool? We can tell everybody we got a new asparagus, but don't let them eat it. We can move into the flowering season, through the seasons in spring. And we get ferns with their very, very subtle green tones. Don't tell me that green isn't a color. I've counted the Crayola box. There are more greens in that box than anything else. All right, so green is definitely a color, and there's so many shades. And ferns are not flashy. They're not, they're not our prairie plants with all kinds of colors and everything. But they provide that wonderful texture, so we can do that with the greens. And then we move into our spring flowering plants, and we can see the cheddar pinks combined with the salvias behind it, right? And the alliums behind that. We'll move a little bit later on into the season, and we have crocosmias. And we've got the allium seed heads again. Leave the seed heads. When they get to the point where they're almost falling apart, spray paint them. I kid you not, spray paint them. Because then you get a few more months out of them after that, right? We move into summer, and we can see we start to see the warm colors really showing up in the summertime. Lots and lots of yellows, especially in the daisy family, right? It's another yellow daisy. But there's lots of shades of yellow, and there's lots of different sizes, and there's big ones and little ones, right? And you can combine that yellow with other things. Most of us go, blech, to yucca. But the color guard yucca, which is what's there, is a beautiful variegated one, right? And it rarely sends up a flower, right? And so if you start to see the flower, you just cut the flower off, right? But there it is combined with yellow coleus, right? There's that Russian sage again, and we're moving on through the seasons, and you can see the things, and we can look close, and we can create these color combinations with our grasses because silver goes with everything. Right? If your favorite colors are hot yellow and hot pink and you put them together and you go, oh, ooh, I think the dog threw something that looked like that last night. Put a silver in between them because the silver will now bounce those other colors off of it instead of each other. But you could be gaudy. If orange is your favorite color, find everything orange. Absolutely not a problem. Right now this is a garden center display, but they're trying to give people ideas. And you can say, oh, I wondered how I was going to get that color into my garden. I was missing that color. I need that color, right? Of course, you could do it in scarlet and gray too. That's a great color combination. I hate to say it, but blue and yellow actually is a really nice flower combination. It's not good on a football team, however, because there it is. It's a fantastic color combination, all right? Combine whatever colors you like. Pick your favorite color and go to the store and say, I want all the colors, I want all the flowers that have that color. Pick your favorite 2 colors and say, I want all the flowers that have that color. And I need something in the spring, and I need something in the late spring, I need something in early summer, I need something in midsummer, I need something in the fall. And now you've come home with that very simple color combination throughout the entire season. You can find the plants in that bluish range. You can find the plants that flower in just about any season at any height that you'd like. Right? We sometimes with our perennials get fall color. This is the exception rather than the rule. It really has to have a perfect fall for most of our perennials to develop fall color. These are Siberian irises, not something that we normally see fall color with. Right? But in this case, they colored beautifully for this particular year. This plant, on the other hand, this is willow or Arkansas blue stars. This plant colors like this every year. This is why you grow this plant. It looks like a nuclear bomb went off in your yard. It's just incredible shades of oranges and yellows, and it's just amazing. And when it flowers in the spring, you're going to go, it's not a big deal. That is a big deal, right? And it's big, and it's bold, and it's native, and it's drought tolerant, and the deer don't like it because it's got yellow or white milky sap inside it. It's sticky. They don't like that. Move into autumn, we see our grasses. Move into winter, and we look at structure. We look at seed heads. Leave those plants up. The perennials have evolved to not have their foliage removed just because it got cold. Right? Those plants, like hosta, are going to go completely dormant and the foliage decomposes. Right? And you barely see it. Right? These other guys that have the foliage that sticks up, they will survive better, particularly their first couple of years, if you leave the foliage up, at least for the beginning part of the winter, because that will protect the crown. And that's what we're trying to shoot for. So we look at all of these seed heads, and there are shrubs in there, obviously. Shrubs are perennials. Perennial is something that lives longer than 3 years. Trees and shrubs live longer than 3 years. They're perennials. Leave the seed heads. That's sedum autumn joy. Very common. You can go to Walmart and buy that. I'm not necessarily recommending that, but you can do it. Right? Buy it from your local garden center. But leave the seed heads, because that's incredible. That's amazing. And it's very simple. It's easy to do. We can put art in the garden. The flamingo colony got big enough it had to travel from one side of the yard to the other side of the yard. Every kid in my neighborhood, all the little kids walk. Their parents say, we have to walk by your house every day in the summertime. And I give them a path so they can go inside and play, because I want them interacting with it. I want them having fun with the garden. I want you to have fun with the garden. Maybe pink flamingos aren't your thing. Maybe containers are your thing. Match the containers to the plants. Well, how do I do that? Take the container shopping with you. But it's too heavy. Fine, take a picture and take your phone with you. Now, most of us have a phone nowadays that has a decent enough camera on it that we can take a picture. Bring that shopping. One day I woke up and the fog was just lighting this. This is Joe Pye weed, just lighting this incredibly. And it's you look at that and you think, well, that's just a strange image. It's really, I don't know. And it's fine if you don't like it. But I thought the fog rolling off of that plant was really, really cool. Right? There are companies now that actually will build ruins for your garden to make it look older. So that's what happened here. The gardener built a ruins on their garden. But that's what they like. And look how they continued the appearance of the columns with the arborvitae out the end. Right? So they brought the garden into the house and the house into the garden. That's what we're looking for. Maybe you've got shutters that have a really cool color. Go and find plants that match that color. Maybe you've got, a window that has a really cool color, or you can see your curtains from outside the house and you like the color of those curtains. You've got a cool color. Maybe you've got pavers that have a neat color. So find something that you can match that with, right? Because we can always create neat little areas. If you got an area that you go, I don't know what to do with it. Well, build something hardscape and then put some containers around it if possible. Look at the different colors of art that are in here, and this is just the Shasta daisy. And then you see how it's been put together and how the white and the yellow blend together. Right? Plants in rocks. In the rocks. Just growing along there like that. Looks fantastic together. Put them in places that you wouldn't necessarily think. Right? This is basket of gold. Basket of gold loves really, really dry locations. So for us, it's very difficult to grow in the ground because it does not like our sloppy wet winters. All right? Put it in a retaining wall. Not going to have a sloppy wet winter at that point. Animals. Animals can be every much as part of the garden as anything else. Those of you are probably not having peacocks run around in your garden on a regular basis, but cats and dogs become as much a part of the garden as anything else. If you like a little art that's a little bit different, I spent some time wondering where the people who were dying were. Help us, help us, help us. But in the end, I looked at this and I said, that's very simple. From a garden perspective, that's very simple. It's not very many different plants. And yet, because I paused to ponder what that piece of art meant, I interacted with it. I interacted with that garden, as simple as it is. So we can do all kinds of things with artwork. Question?
Was that a sedge in front of the...
What is that? Is a sedge in front of there? Yes. So again, if you're more traditional with your art tastes, then buy traditional art. If you're more natural, get a rock, piece of driftwood, anything. Stones, containers, anything can be used. There's a piece of driftwood. Lying down, plants growing around it, looking like it just kind of fell there. Right? So we can do all kinds of things with our art. This particular plant is Petasites, the Japanese butterbur. And if you grow that in the ground, not contained, you probably would be better off to move rather than try to get rid of it. It is a beautiful, bold, bodacious plant that loves wet sites. It is big. The leaves are this size. Right? Not many things that we can grow easily here get leaves this size. And it gets leaves this size, about 1 billion of them. It could easily take over this entire room. Right? Look for places that you could put things, even if you can't necessarily grow the plants in that exact corner. And finally, please, please remember why you do this. It's supposed to be fun. We are supposed to have a good time. We're supposed to let the aliens know that we're waiting for their return. We are supposed to take that stuff that we find at a garage sale and go, I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but it's really, really cool. Put it in the garden. The plants will not judge you. I promise. I make no claim for what your neighbors are going to think, but the plants will not judge you. Right? Look how this works, even if you're going, not in my yard. That's cool, but not in my yard. But it works because it's a very simple combination and the art has been treated like a plant, like part of your garden. Spray paint your alliums, right? Maybe you've got little kids or grandchildren or cousins or kids in the neighborhood and you could say, this is the Dr. Seuss garden. And it will intrigue them. Get them into gardening. When you lose a shoe, the other one becomes a container, okay? Obviously. Again, you can see they're flying back from the south. There's the container that there's their right there. That's their airplane. They always leave in that container, right? But have fun with it because it's hard work. Gardening is a lot of work. So you might as well have a good time with it. Go on Pinterest and try to make everything on Pinterest when it comes to gardening. That's where I saw this on Pinterest. This is my front yard. And I also happen to be kind of like a science fiction sort of geeky person. And so we built this out of duct tape and plastic. And I told my friend who's a heuchera breeder, I said, I need one called the Force or the Dark Side or something, because that would just be awesome in this container. Have a good time with your garden, because in the end, it is your garden. And as you have a good time this year, I ask that you take 5 minutes. 5, that's all I know I'm not going to get any more than that from gardeners. We're too busy. 5 minutes to appreciate the beauty that is your garden. I know all you can see is the weeds, because that's all I see in mine. Right? Spend 5 minutes appreciating the beauty. You have created a piece of art. Have fun with it and enjoy it. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Anybody got any questions? Yes? What flowers would I recommend for clay soil? Almost anything in the Asteraceae family, the daisy family. Many of our natives, if you look at purple cone flowers, if you look at black-eyed Susans, if you look at asters, look at Russian sage, ornamental grasses are fantastic for clay soils. You can often get many of the sedum. Heuchera, if you've got a more shady site, heuchera will do fairly well with that. So there's lots and lots of things for clay soils. Yes?
Back sedum, they get so tall. Halfway to the seed, you can cut it back like you do mums.
The question here was, can you cut back sedum because it gets so tall and then it gets kind of floppy? Yeah, but you don't want to do it halfway through the season. When that plant gets to be about 4 to 6 inches, that's roughly 6 inches, all right? When that plant gets to be about 4 to 6 inches tall, cut it in half. So at 4 inches, cut it to 2. At 6 inches, cut it to 3, obviously. Right? And then you'll reduce the height at the end of the season and you won't have to deal with it. So yes, you can treat it like a mum, but you want to do it early in the season. Question? The question here was, can I do that with asters and the big tall asters? Yes, you can definitely do that with asters. Again, you want to do it in that 4 to 6 inch range. Saw a hand up here.
The plant with the large leaves, the water plant.
The water plant with the large leaves. It's called Japanese butter burr. Butter burr. As in the things that get on your dog. B-U-R-R, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Your wetland one, the picture picture with the lambs here and that. There was a pretty plant on the right-hand side.
The question was, in the picture with the lambs here where I was talking about you can create a little kind of mini swimming pool for the wet plants, and the one in the back behind that, was it kind of a yellow leaf? Yes, that one is a Rus. It's a sumac called Tiger Eyes. Be careful. That will also need contained. So that little area is a retaining wall on 2 sides and a sidewalk on the 3rd side, because it is a plant that, like most sumacs, wants to take up a bit of space. Those are great plants. I would never recommend not to put an aggressive plant in the garden, but make sure that you deal with those on a day that you're in a bad mood. Because if you're in a good mood and you get your shovel out, you just kind of, you putz around it, oh, I'm sorry, don't die. If you're in a bad mood, get out and that's what those plants need. So you have to be willing to go in there and dig and divide on a fairly regular basis with them to keep them controlled. Yes?
What kind of campanula, the ground cover you were talking about at the very beginning?
The question is, what kind of campanula was the ground cover that I showed? The one with the purplish blue flower that was kind of in the shaded area? That's Campanula porsharskiana. Would you like me to spell that for you? P-O-R-S-C-H-A-R-K-I-A-N-A. Porsharskiana. You're welcome. Question?
What's your favorite online web garden store for some of these unusual plants?
What's my favorite online garden store for ordering plants? Yeah. Plant Delights.
What's it called?
Plant Delights. PlantDelights.com. The owner of the company is a guy named Tony Avent. He travels the world looking for plants. If it's different, unusual, weird, and he has no idea how to grow it, that's what he wants. Because you'll see on his website lots and lots of times, Zone 7, we think, because that's roughly the same climate that they found it in, but that doesn't mean that plants won't adapt to other climates. Some of them are fairly common. There's a great company up in Michigan that grows more common things than not necessarily the unusual, I don't know how to grow it sort of thing. It's called Great Garden Plants, and they are only online. So they do not have a garden center that you can go to. It's greatgardenplants.com, run by a great plant breeder named Chris Hansen, and they are, for the first time this year, going to be releasing an orange hens and chicks. It is the color of these chairs, folks. The color of these chairs, hens and chicks in orange. He put a picture on their website and I went, I need this! And they're like, not available yet. No! Yes, in the back, sir.
We have an area that's shady and quite damp.
Shady and damp. That actually is a good sign. At least you didn't tell me it was shady and dry. That was shady and damp. You're looking for, how damp? Like pool damp or like squishy? Like bog? But when I walk in the middle of August, it's going to go, it's
Short of squishy.
squishy. All right, squishy we can do. Actually, the Astilbes love squishy. Ligularia that I showed you loves that wet, squishy. Hosta love that sort of thing. Tons and tons of ferns. If you're looking for something a little bit taller, there's a plant called Karingashoma, which is called Japanese wax bells. It tends to like it more on the wet side. There's a huge giant plant called Rogersia that has a great big large Buckeye-looking leaf and an Astilbe-like flower, and it needs very, very wet, shady locations. So if you want a shrub, Kyria, the Japanese Kyria, which will get about this tall with a bright yellow flower, they'll get you started. Yes?
What do you recommend to enrich clay soil? How would you amend that?
What would I recommend to enrich clay soil? Any organic matter, whatever is locally available, readily available for you. Peat moss can be sustainably harvested, and if you can get sustainably harvested peat moss, then that's a fantastic product. If you've got a compost pile, if you happen to live more toward the rural part of a state, most farmers will allow you to pull a truck up to their compost, make sure it's composted, but any compost, what you're looking for is approximately the ability to get about 30% of that volume of soil to be organic matter. But any organic matter that's in your area is good stuff. Yes? What would I recommend for fencing? What do you like in a fence? Oh, you were talking about plants along the fence. I thought you meant what would I recommend as a fence. What would I recommend for plants along the fence? You want tall, you short, wide, big? What? Doesn't matter. I would go, one of the best native type plants is called Silphium. S-I-L-P-H-I-U-M, Silphium. And there are several different species of this. So you can get cup plant, you can get compass plant, you can get one called prairie dock. They're all in the same, so cup plant, compass plant, prairie dock, Silphium, S-I-L-P-H-I-U-M. And they're big, they're bold, they're broad, and they love hot dry. So they'd be, and they're tall. So the shortest of those is probably compass plant, about this. Cup plant is the tallest. It's going to be about in the 14, 15 foot range. Fantastic for bees. Bees love them. Yes?
I have a pond in my yard that is shaded by my neighbor's overgrown bushes. Would grass grow in there, any kind of ornamental grass? Everything I've seen, it says full sun.
Yes, you're going to want to switch to the sedges. The question was, you've got a shaded area that's with neighbors' plants that have kind of gotten overgrown. So trying to get some grass-like appearance in there. You're going to want to switch to our sedges. They're not going to be as tall. The tallest sedge is about 2 feet tall. We actually have a native one that's in that 2 foot range. Carex muskinghamensis, which is native. Will happily grow in this area quite easily, but they love shade. That you're not going to get the height. Muskingum sedge. Carex, C-A-R-E-X. Muskingum, like the river, Muskingum, M-U-S-K-I-N-G-U-M. Ensis, E-N-S-I-S, Muskinghumensis. But there's also Carex pennsylvanica, which is a little bit taller, and that's a Pennsylvania sedge. And that's, again, in about the 2 foot range. So a way to give you an ornamental grass look in a more shaded location. There was a question here.
Can you grow perennials in window boxes?
Can you grow perennials in window boxes? Yes, you can. Can you grow a perennial that's going to have a giant taproot in a window box? No, that's a little bit harder to do. But heucheras, tiarellas, many of our sedums, a lot of our shorter asters, the short cultivars of blanket flower, any of those will do very, very well in a window box. You're just probably going to need to water them a bit more. The questions, I seem to be here.
I have an endless summer hydrangea. Sometimes it moves and sometimes it doesn't.
Are you doing any pruning with it? Are you pruning it? The question was endless summer hydrangea, occasionally not blooming. Yeah. Is it not flowering throughout the season, or like this year it'll flower and this year it won't? Yeah. That's what it's doing. Flowering one year and not flowering the next year. Some of that may be due to weather. The way they've created that particular hybrid was to take the plants that flower on the old growth and plants that flower in the new growth and breed them together. So you've got some stems that are flowering on old growth and some stems that are flowering on new growth, which is how we get in a prolonged flowering period with that particular plant. So my guess is if you're not doing any pruning with it, that what we're happening is one of those stems is got something going on in the environment that's preventing it from doing its thing. Is it getting full sun? All right, so that to me sounds like it's probably more of like an environmental issue. Maybe you run a soil test and see if there's enough nutrients in there. Flowering is a very expensive thing for a plant to do from an energy perspective. So if it's kind of going to an every other year sort of thing, then it may say, well, we just don't have enough nutrients. We're not going to do it this year, because if we spend the energy on the flowers, we might not make it through the winter.
It looks healthy.
It looks healthy, but it's missing something if it's not flowering. All right, so maybe see if you have deer that are nipping buds off. Somebody is saying that. Yes, over here, sorry.
Do you have a favorite combination for your potting mixture?
Do I have a favorite combination for potting mixture? What I really like to use is peat moss, and I'll just buy regular old topsoil. It tends to be a little more dense, but it's also got more nutrients in it than potting soil, and it doesn't have any of the perlite, which just rises to the top and floats and gets all over anything. So I'll use topsoil and combine it with peat moss. If you can get vermiculite, that's also a fantastic thing. And then usually what I'll do is I'll just throw in a little bit of compost in there, add a little bit of nutrients in there.
I have a lot of compost.
You can grow it right in the compost, but if you mix it with if you mix it with topsoil or any other soil, you can dig it right out of the garden if you want to do that. But if you mix it with something
that will loosen it up. It seems like over the course of the growing season, the compost does kind of hack down.
peat moss, because the peat moss has larger particles to it. Yeah, or if you can, don't use perlite because it starts floating. If you can get vermiculite, if you can get that by itself, you might have to go to a garden center and ask if they've got their big bags of that. You can mix that in, and that will help keep that loose also. But then at the end of the season, just take your pots and dump them onto the compost pile, or dump them out into a big bin, and then you can just use a shovel to bust that up, and you can use it again the following year. Other questions on this side? Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, you right there.
A friend of mine gave me a bucket of coneflowers, and in it, she said there's a chocolate flower. I never heard of it.
Chocolate flower, as in the vine? Does it have tiny little, kind of a 5-lobed leaf?
Yeah. Yeah.
Be careful. Well, it's a beautiful plant. It'll have an incredible flower to it. It is definitely a bad mood sort of plant. It's a vine. You're going to want to let it grow up, or you're going to say, I don't have the time or the energy to deal with a plant like that, and onto the compost pile, send it off to a new phase of its career. Yes, in the back.
I have a trumpet vine that's ruined my life.
You have a trumpet vine that's ruined your life? There's probably a house for sale down the street. In other words, you'd like to get rid of this plant?
Yeah, and it's, I've taken it, basically I just keep chopping it, and then when it comes up, I hate to use Roundup, but I cut a vine, put it in the Roundup, and try to feed it through, but it just keeps popping up everywhere.
Girdle the plant. Girdle it. It's probably got a big trunk on it at this point if it's that old, or you've got several trunks.
Well, I cut the trunk down.
Okay, and it's coming up from that?
It's coming up, it's already woven through underground, and it just pops up everywhere.
Yeah, because it's now coming up from the roots. Yeah. So as those, you're gonna, man, trumpet vine is such a nasty plant. Evidence that not all native plants are well-behaved plants because it's native, as is poison ivy. Let me see. So we've got it coming up from the roots. We no longer have a vine. I would switch to, instead of using Roundup, and I know you're probably not a big fan of chemicals if you're saying I don't like even to use Roundup, but in this case, I think I'm going to have to recommend that you go with a chemical Triclopyr. Triclopyr, which is usually sold under an Ortho product as Brush Be Gone. I'm sure the other companies have products that have in it, but Triclopyr, Triclopyr.
Okay.
And it's a fantastic product for very persistent woody plants.
Okay.
But Ortho sells it as a Brush Be Gone, but look for that chemical Triclopyr because other companies got to sell it. I just don't know what their product names are.
Okay, but it is something I can actually get.
Oh yeah. There's a restricted use version of it that's just a higher concentration, but the normal version of it is Brush Be Gone. And it's pretty good stuff. It's great for thistles, bindweed, poison ivy, any of our very, very persistent weedy plants. It's fantastic for that. But like Roundup, it is a broadleaf killer. It will kill everything, so be careful with it. So if you've got it coming up in the lawn, you can put some gloves on, all right, and they get a sponge, and you can sponge individual plants. If you got gloves on and things like that, you can put it in a little tiny spray bottle and hold your gloves underneath and just get individual ones. This is going to be a plant that may take you some time to deal with. It may take several applications of this because it's got a big root system, and it's just going to keep coming back from that until we wear it out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Have you heard of the online company, Bluestone Perennials?
Yes, Bluestone Perennials is a fantastic little company. I've ordered plants from them before, and they've been very, very quality plants that have been shipped promptly. So they're a great company. Yes.
So moved into a new house, and the back portion of the yard was pretty much all honeysuckle, and I've been clearing it out, and I eventually want to make a shade meandering path garden, but the ground is just, vines and tree roots and a hot mess. So I guess what's the easiest way to start a new area with all of this?
How many of the trees that are there are plants that you really worried about?
I want to keep.
You want to keep some of them, but in other words, it's some of them you don't mind if their roots get a little torn up a bit, because we're really trying to get rid of some of these other things. Get yourself a big rototiller.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen is when you disturb the soil, the weeds are going to come up, right? Because that's what causes germination. But then you can go in with either a chemical killer or a black plastic to heat up the soil.
Well, that's why I was wondering if it would be easier to just lay out plastic and start with new dirt.
Newspapers are also fantastic. I wouldn't recommend plastic if you're going to put the dirt on top of that, but if you're going to use newspapers and then you're going to build the soil up from there, that works, but be careful not building it up too much around the trunks of the trees, because then you're going to impact their life as well. So you can build up from there a little bit, and that will help control things. But you can also use the plastic to heat things up and get rid of some of those plants, because the heat will force germination of some of those weeds that are in there. And then once they stay in the plastic, the continued heat kills them after that. So it's a good way to deal with fairly large areas.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like surface roots.
Yes.
I don't know what is the trees I want to keep. So
They're probably already mixed, so you're not going to be able to separate those things out. So once you're able to get your honeysuckles out of there, and you're ready to the point where you're cultivating the ground, I wouldn't worry so much about the trees. Those trees are going to have roots that are extending out. So if you're cultivating in certain areas, are you going to impact the trees a little bit? Of course you're going to impact the trees a little bit, but their tree roots are probably broad enough that they can handle some cultivation to try to get some better soil in there.
I was told that plants actually like to be raised, and their roots will do better if you mound up instead of...
Depends on the drainage. What they really like is good drainage for the most part. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to raise everything, because if you're raising too much around the trunks of these trees, you're actually going to decrease the lifespan of those plants. Yes?
Thanks to my neighbors, I have a good supply of the lesser celandine. And how would you recommend to get rid of it among perennials?
So the question is, she's got some lesser celandine, and she wants to get rid of it in and amongst perennials. Its root system is not, it's extensive, but it's not like a thistle. So you should be able to go and pull those out. If you've got huge quantities of celandine and lesser quantities of perennials at this point, where it's just taken over, what I would recommend is dig up the perennials, then go in with a sod lifter, and just get underneath that whole thing and just get them all out, and then you can put the perennials back. And that's a way to not have to use chemicals, but obviously you could go in with something like a Roundup. Once you get the good plants out of there, you leave the weed, and we lift the good plants. Okay, well then if there's a lot and you can't or you don't want to lift them because of their numbers, then I would start with hand pulling, and that way when you get little shoots coming up, tiny little baby plants that are rapidly growing, very, very sensitive to chemicals like Roundup. All right. So if you've got the older plants, you spray them, it may or may not work on them. Baby plants, it almost always works on those. So pull them out of the ground and spray them then, and that way they're down here, and your perennials may be a little bit taller, and you can spray closer to the ground, not impacting your plants.
Dr. Dieter, we're going to take one more question.
Sure.
And then Jan has a presentation, but one more question.
All right, one more. Who should we do? Okay. You can talk to me afterwards.
We have a freeze predicted for tonight. Oh, everything's coming up. What? Yes. Do we just pray, or what?
Well, how much work are you willing to do? Your peonies are coming up. The daylilies are coming up. The roses are coming out. Most of these plants will tolerate a leaf drop, and then they'll send up new leaves, because this is just something that happens with plants on a regular basis. Plants that are already in full flower, we're probably going to see some of those plants, magnolias in particular, which are very sensitive to that, are going to get knocked back. If you've got things that are very, very sensitive, and peonies would be one of those things. Leaves, if you still got leaves in your garden, a little extra compost over that crown, that will help. Anything you can do to increase the heat in that area. So take a look at the very, very sensitive plants, and then cover those, rather than saying, well, I've got a 1,500 square feet of garden. Holy cow, what am I going to do? Most of the plants, they're going to deal with it just fine. All right? Maybe they're going to get some frost damage on their leaves. We're just going to have to deal with that. All right? Things that are really, really sensitive, cover those crowns with leaves or compost or mulch or anything that you happen to have around. Okay, I think we've got to be done. We can answer questions all day.
Any reason to doubt why she gets top grades from all her students? That was it. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
have just a little something to give you to add to your collection.
Oh my gosh, it's a big flamingo.
Just a little token of our appreciation.
Look, it's a little pink flamingo. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.